Welcome back to a very special episode of the Wicked Webs We Weave podcast. I am your host, Ryan Mckern. Bon nuit, and welcome as we explore Poverty Point, Louisiana, its mysticism, paranormal activity, and historical landmarks, as well as Transylvania, Louisiana, an area you might not be familiar with. We will explore. Warm your hands next to the proverbial fire, my friends. And thank you again for joining me in the darkness for the wicked webs we weave. Poverty Point World Heritage Site is a story 3,400 years in the making. A trading hub, an engineering marvel, a monument to ingenuity. There are many ways to describe Poverty Point. In 2014, a new label was added, UNESCO, World Heritage Site. Embark with me on this journey. Centuries ago, when Stonehenge was built and Queen Nefertiti ruled Egypt, American Indians were building earthen monuments in Louisiana. Hand by hand and basket by basketful, men and women shaped nearly 2 million cubic yards of soil into stunning landscapes. The result was a massive 72-foot-tall mound. Enormous, concentric half-circles and related earthworks that dwarfed every other earthen monument site for 2,200 years. The amount of forethought and organization needed to build Poverty Point without the aid of modern instruments, domesticated animals, or even wheeled carts must have been staggering, to say the least. And for what reason? We still do not know. The clues are constantly being revealed. Archaeologists have much to work with, as millions of artifacts were found at this site. Domestic tools, human figurines, and tons of stones from up to 800 miles away have led to speculation that Poverty Point was an ancient residential, trade, and ceremonial center. More mysteries. Poverty Point was abandoned around 1100 BC. A more recent native group added another mound in about AD 700, but occupied only a small fraction of the site, and only for a brief period. Aside from that, there was only intermittent human use of the site for 2,900 years, until Euro-Americans settled in the area in the 1800s. After hearing a few reports of the ancient settlement, archaeologists began systematically recording the site and collecting some of its countless artifacts. In 1962, the federal government designated it as a National Historic Landmark, one of the highest honors for an archaeological site in the U.S., and in 2014, the site achieved perhaps the highest honor of all, UNESCO, named Poverty Point a World Heritage Site. There are only other 3 archaeological sites in the U.S. with that distinction. Those who lived at Poverty Point more than 3,000 years ago left no written records of their day-to-day lives. We know that the site was a ceremonial center that was once home to hundreds or perhaps thousands of people, as well as a trading hub and unmatched by any in North America at the time. Archaeologists have learned about these people by the materials they left behind, artifacts and archaeological features, as well as what they didn't leave behind, such as burials and crop remains. Burial mounds were common throughout the southeastern and central United States, yet the absence of human remains at Poverty Point suggests these monuments, earthworks, built by hand, were used for other purposes. Just as curious as the lack of domesticated plant remains found at Poverty Point, archaeologists have found evidence of nuts, persimmons, and grapes, which along with fish, deer, and other wild foods, were more than sufficient for survival. This makes sense, as the lower Mississippi Valley is one of North America's most fertile regions, abundant with food that was literally ripe for the picking Foregoing was a fundamental part of Poverty Point society. So was commerce. The site once was the site of the center of a huge trafficking network. 78 tons of rocks and minerals from up to 800 miles away were brought to Poverty Point, an area built on an elevated landform, Mckern Ridge, that contained no stone of its own. Its people needed this raw material to craft its weapons, tools, and ceremonial items. This would have been impossible with the help from faraway travelers or locals traveling by boat to collect rocks themselves. We know much about Poverty Point society just where they built their homes, looking over Bayou Mckern. It's easy to assume that these men and women relied on the river. Thanks to animal and plant remains, we know their diet consisted largely of fish, alligators, frogs, turtles, deer, hickory nuts, aquatic tubers, fruits, and other wild foods. Most of the animal bones found in the site were from locally caught fish. The question of why Poverty Point was abandoned remains unanswered. A subsequent American Indian group came along in 700 AD and reused a small part of the site, but otherwise it remained abandoned until its rediscovery in the 1800s. Poverty Point's centerpiece is its collection of earthworks built during a 600-year period, or what today would be considered 25 generations. Its concentric half circles, measuring 4 to 6 feet high in places, have an outside diameter of 3/4 of a mile apart. Mound A, commonly known as Bird Mound, is one of the largest in North America. Everything about the earthen structures in Poverty Point suggests a concentrated effort to build a massive residential and ceremonial center that had no rival in terms of scale and size. There are few uses for mounds. Some are used for burials. Some are used for platforms to elevate special buildings or temples. Others, such as shell mounds in Florida, are ancient trash heaps. Yet Poverty Point stands apart, with no human remains or heaps or shells. Archaeologists assume that these were symbols of power and wealth. People lived on the earthen ridges. Excavations have revealed postmolds, distinction stains in the soil caused by now decomposed wooden posts, which are probably the remains of houses. At Poverty Point, dwellings were wattle and taub constructions, meaning the wattles were formed by a woven framework of cane and sticks that were covered in mud. The scale of construction here makes the Poverty Point stand apart from another reason. During this era of human history, known as the Late Archaic, most people lived in small groups. Due to the size of the earthen ridges, the habitation area of Poverty Point, however, there have been many, at least hundreds of residents. And here's a mystery. In the 43-acre plaza, defined by earthen C-shaped designed ridges, are the remains of massive potholes and were set in circles standing up to 203 feet in diameter. An American version of Stonehenge? Perhaps. Or not. The plaza would have made it an ideal meeting place. Some have speculated that this is used for astronomical observation. Much of what we know about Poverty Point comes from its diverse artifact collection. Unfortunately, objects made of wood or other organic materials, as canoes or fishnets, which could have been told us about these people traded and used daily, decomposed a long time ago. Thankfully, though, there are plenty of stone and clay artifacts that help tell the story. Think of Poverty Point as decorations and styles that fingerprint. The intricate owl designs carved from the red jasper stone and the ceramic human figurines are particular to this place. This tells us that the art is important to this ancient civilization, and the images may have been held spiritual significance as well. Think of the stone found at Poverty Point as a roadmap. Rocks and minerals came to the site from as far away as present-day Iowa and as far east as the Appalachians. Water tied these routes together, like our modern highway system, Boat travel along the Mississippi River and the tributaries facilitated the movement of people by mid-arterials. Pottery is not abundant at Poverty Point, but it's people among the first in the lower Mississippi Valley to make earthen vessels. They also made many other objects fired earth or clay, such as Poverty Point objects and figurines. When visiting the site, you will see numerous examples of fired clay used thousands of years ago. However, stone was more popular than clay for making vessels, and not just any stone, but soapstone from Georgia and Alabama quarries were frequently used. Some pieces were decorated with bird and panthers and other designs of panther. The soapstone bowls were highly valued at Poverty Point, and you can find examples of the broken stone bowls that were repaired or reused, and others that were turned into pendants and beads. Sandstone was also used to form vessels. Before leaving the museum, when you visit Poverty Point, be sure to read more about examples of what are known as simply as Poverty Point objects, the most numerous of all artifacts of the site. These are small hand-clayed formed balls that were used to cook food. The PPOs were built to place whole, and the fire was built to heat them. When the fire died down, the raw meat or fish was added. The hole was covered with dirt, cooking the meat. Other native cultures used rocks for the same purpose. But at Poverty Point, where stones were closely obtained, prehistoric chefs found an ingenious workaround. Transylvania, Louisiana, named by a plantation owner who attended Transylvania University in Lexington, Kentucky. Something mysteriously changes as you ride the section of Highway 65 in northeast Louisiana. Some real characters tend to gravitate to Transylvania on Halloween. The spooky name, the bat on the water tower, the old abandoned schoolhouse. What better place? It's kind of creepy, but we're going to say it's going up there. But if there's a Transylvania nearby, we got to go see it, said Caitlin Riley. Caitlin Riley of Monroe isn't the only one wanting to see this town and the famed name. Some folks from Arkansas drove here, specifically to let their little witch pose for a picture in front of the Transylvania post office. People from everywhere are sending in their Halloween cards and postmarks, said Lisa Reddick, East Carroll Parish Postmaster. A packet of Halloween cards comes in for no charge in the Wings Creatures postmark. No extra charge for the bat stamp for Randy Walters, whose driver's license says Transylvania. It makes life interesting when trying to travel. If I'm trying to get on an airplane, I can't because they don't think Transylvania is a place that exists. After about 15 or 20 minutes, they finally let me on, said Randy Walters. Gene Stewart, who lived there for 57 years. There are no real bats or creepy crawlies, just some good old home cooking at the Transylvania Farmhouse restaurant. It's a nice place to live, and I guess it's where I'll stay, said Gene Stewart of Transylvania, Louisiana. Now there's a Transylvania County in North Carolina. The real Transylvania is in Eastern Europe and Romania, and there's a Transylvania University in Lexington, Kentucky, which happens to be how this little town got its name. That was alma mater of the first plantation owner in the area. The following ghost story is from yourghoststories.com, featuring a story about Transylvania, Louisiana. I have had many supernatural encounters over the years, but this one is the most interesting. The story takes place in a little town called Transylvania, Louisiana in early 1993. Transylvania is located off Highway US 65 South, about 44 miles northwest of Vicksburg, Mississippi. There are cotton fields all around this region. My boyfriend and I were out on our way to a new home in southeastern Louisiana. We had the car loaded down, and with our dog, Berkey, was sleeping in the back seat. It was early in the morning, about 2 or 3 a.m. I was drifting in and out of consciousness when I noticed signs along the road warning motorists that hitchhikers could actually be escaped inmates from nearby prison farms.
I had never heard of a prison farm before, so I became curious and started a conversation with my boyfriend on the subject. According to Wikipedia, a prison farm is a large correctional facility where hard labor convicts are put to economical use in a farm, in the wild sense of a productive unit, usually for manual labor, largely in open air such as in agriculture, lodging, quarrying, etc. Its historical equivalent on a very large scale was called a penal colony. At this point in the story, I was fully awake and engaged in a conversation that became even more interesting as we rolled into the sleepy town of Transylvania. We quickly noticed that the huge water tower and the black bats and the word Transylvania. We cracked a few jokes about the spooky water tower, but other than the unusual name and seemingly normal small-town southern culture, the place was not eerie until we came upon something very incredible. It appeared that there was a man, a very tall man, walking on the road ahead of us. It was a little foggy out, so I thought I might have been imagining it. As we came closer, he noticed that this is no man at all. It appeared to be some kind of creature I had never seen. It looked like some mythical creature, part human and part buffalo. Its coloring was brown and patchy. I could see right through it. Suddenly, as we came within 10 feet of it, the spook stepped directly in the path of our moving vehicle. We were probably going about 55 miles per hour. My boyfriend slammed on his brakes, and the dog went flying into the back of the seat and yelped. The beast slowly and nonchalantly turned his head sideways and looked at us intensely with despondent, hollow eyes, yet in an almost scolding look, then vanished. I got the definite feeling that this thing was very purposely walked out in front of us, with every intention of making us wreck. About a month later, my boyfriend was traveling the same highway at night with a friend, whom he had told not a thing about the creepy supernatural beast we had seen in Transylvania. When they came into Transylvania, what did they see? None other than the same haint that tried to make us crash a month earlier. I would not have been able to find anything that would help explain what I saw when I was 19. Until recently, it turns out, according to another ghost story website, this place is very haunted. There has been a body of a woman with a goat's head sighted at the Transylvania post office many times. And that will do it for this episode of the Wicked Webs We Weave podcast. Once again, I am your host, Ryan Mckern, and I want to thank you all for listening, liking, and subscribing to the podcast. Please feel free to share and leave in the comments anything you would like to hear me cover in a future episode. And until we meet again, mon ami, au revoir.